Two separate courts in the Nigeria Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, on Tuesday fixed October 27 and November 20, 2025 for the commencement of the lawsuits brought before them by the founder and publisher of Sowore Reporters, Omiyele Sowore, and the Department of State Service, DSS, over issue of posts published on X and Facebook social media platforms that allegedly described President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as a criminal after the president allegedly said there is no more corruption in Nigeria while the president was speaking at an event in Brazil in the month of August 2025. According to Omiyele Sowore's lawyer, Tope Temokan, today, at the Federal High Court in Abuja, proceedings commenced in the historic cases filed by rights activist Omiyele Sowore challenging the clampdown on free speech and political expression by the Department of State Services, SSS, in collusion with global social media giants Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and X Corporation, Twitter. The suits are Omiyele Sowore vs. SSS and Meta, FHC, ABJ, CS, 1887-2025. Omiyele Sowore vs. SSS and X Corporation, FHC, ABJ, CS, 1888-2025. Sowore was represented by a formidable team of lawyers, led by Tope Temokan, Abubakar Marshall, Alexander Aketa, Dr. S.M. Oyaha, Dr. Maxwell Opara, Akin Sowore, and Akoje Sava. Representation for the respondents. Meta appeared through Mafesimo Teo Yetabo, San. X Corporation and the DSS had no counsel present in court proceedings. The court granted motions ex parte filed by Sowore's counsel for leave to serve Meta and X Corporation outside jurisdiction through electronic means. The originating motion against Meta was also served in court on Meta's counsel. Adjournment. The court adjourned both matters to November 20, 2025, for hearing. These suits filed, following the DSS attempted censorship of Sowore's social media post, calling the president a criminal, mark a significant stand against both local repression and international collaboration in silencing dissenting voices. Sowore insists that no government agency or foreign corporation has the right to muzzle Nigerians in the digital space, Barrister Tope Temokan stated on September 30, 2025. At a separate court where the federal government of Nigeria filed a 5-count charges against the news media publisher, Omiyele Sowore and the DSS had planned to arraign the publisher before the court. Vanguard newspaper reported that, when the matter came up, Sowore's counsel, Marshal Abubakar, objected to the charges being read, arguing that his client had not been properly served. He also noted the absence of legal representation for X. However, Meta was represented in court by a team led by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Teo Yetabo. Justice Muhammad Umar, presiding, directed that Sowore be served in court, an order not opposed by any of the parties, including Muhammad Babadoko, Director of Public Information from the Nigerian Presidency, has indicated that there is a plan by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to begin legal action against the country's former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, over sustained and continuous rumors in certain quarters that ex-President Jonathan may have indicated interest to recontest as Nigeria president in 2027. The Special Advisor to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, said Jonathan is welcome to join the 2027 presidential electoral race, but Jonathan will have his date in the court of the land. Indeed, the jury will determine whether Jonathan, who was sworn in twice as president, satisfies the constitutional requirements and is eligible to contest the presidency and be sworn in, if successful, for a third term in office. It would be recalled that ex-President Jonathan was one of the most criticized presidents in Nigeria, with politicians, including President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was then a chieftain of the Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, forming a coalition of All Progressives Congress, APC, to defeat the incumbent president in 2015. Currently, there is also a coalition formed by politicians in Nigeria, the African Democratic Congress, ADC, to defeat and remove President Tinubu from office in 2027, and lately, reports indicated that the former president, Goodluck Jonathan is considering joining the African Democratic Congress, ADC, but no official announcement has been made. The speculation intensified after Jonathan met with ADC National Chairman David Mark in late September 2025, amidst ongoing discussions about the 2027 presidential election. And Jonathan's closed-door meeting with ADC leaders on September 25, 2025, fueled widespread speculation about his potential run for the presidency on their platform. In a statement issued on Monday, Bayo Onanuga, the spokesperson to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, said, "As we begin the march towards the 2027 elections prematurely foisted on the nation by the desperation of the opposition ganging up against President Bola Tinubu despite his glaring giant economic strides, we are once again regaled with a cacophony of voices, most of them full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, to paraphrase inimitable William Shakespeare in one of his classic works, Macbeth." One recent statement that stands out in its absurdity is Professor Jerry Garner's. The former Minister of Information and National Orientation, moving to draft former President Goodluck Jonathan into the 2007 presidential race, affirmed that the former president would contest the coming election on the platform of the discredited People's Democratic Party, PDP, which bequeathed a legacy of economic ruins, after 16 years of bad governance. Garner even deluded himself, asserting that the former president would defeat President Tinubu to reclaim power after 12 years. Professor Garner of the defunct MAMSER fame is free to delude himself and engage in his usual comedy. After all, Jonathan's entering the race would provide another job for the Niger state-born former university don. However, we should caution former Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday stated that many world leaders who do come out publicly to condemn the Israel war in Gaza, do privately thank Israel for staging the war against Hamas, and according to Benjamin Netanyahu, the world leaders tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence, once said, "If the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. This, Benjamin Netanyahu stated when the speech was being broadcast live via huge loudspeakers that were placed on the Gaza border while the Israel Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, which, his appearance drew a mix of applause and protest, with some delegates walking out of the hall as he took the stage. You know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us, privately thank us, Benjamin Netanyahu stated in response. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated and blamed the Israel war in Gaza on Iran, saying, "Iran terror axis threatened the peace of the entire world." Some parts of the long speech by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations General Assembly are presented verbatim below. Mr. President, the families of our dear hostages languishing in the dungeons of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen, last year, I stood at this podium, and I showed this map. It shows the curse of Iran's terror axis. This axis threatened the peace of the entire world. It threatened the stability of our region and the very existence of my country Israel. Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. From Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah had launched thousands of missiles and rockets at our cities, terrorizing our citizens. In Syria, the murderous dictator Assad hosted Iran's forces, tightening a noose of death around our throats. In Yemen, the Houthis launched ballistic missiles at Israel, while choking global trade at the mouth of the Red Sea. So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. We crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. Remember those beepers, the pages? We paged Hezbollah, and believe me, they got the message and thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above everything else that I could say to you all, that we— Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday ruled that the detained Biafra agitation leader, Nnamdi Kanu, has case to answer, because the Nigeria government prosecution team have provided some evidence that requires explanations from the detained Biafra leader. The coordinating lawyer to Nnamdi Kanu, Barrister Aloy Ejimakor, said the judgment of the court does not mean Nnamdi Kanu has been pronounced guilty. Rather, the ruling indicated that he should give explanations to certain evidences the federal government of Nigeria brought before the court. It would be recalled that the ruling on the no-case submission filed by Nnamdi Kanu that was earlier slated to be held on October 10, 2025 was abridged and rescheduled to Friday the 26th of September 2025. Justice James Omotosho also rejected request by Kanu to be transferred from custody of the Department of State Services, DSS, to the National Hospital Abuja for medical examination over alleged deteriorating health issues. The court subsequently ordered the president of Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, to constitute an investigation committee to examine Kanu's medical condition and submit a report to it in 8 days following objection by DSS to his request to be transferred to National Hospital for second opinion on his health condition. We had earlier in the year reported that the case between the federal government of Nigeria and the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, apparently took a new technical twist after one of the lawyers of the detained Biafra leader, Paul Erikoro, SAN, presented and played 3 videos which the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja later admitted in evidence. The videos of former Nigeria Chief of Army Staff, retired General Theophilus Danjuma, saying, security operatives in the West Africa country, specifically, the armed forces are working together with the armed bandits to kill Nigerians, stressing that, if Nigerians depend on the armed forces to curb insecurity, they will all die one by one. Also that of Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, saying, politicians are behind killings in the state. Lastly, and the most interesting video played at the court to counter the testimony or statement made by the DSS prosecutor witness over Nnamdi Kanu-led IPOB founding Eastern Security Network, ESN, allegedly created by group of youths in the southeastern geopolitical zone of Nigeria, often referred to as Biafra land, to fight in self-defense against Fulani armed bandits or terrorists that were advancing and killing people in the eastern states during the era of President Muhammadu Buhari, was that of the Director General of the Department of State Services, DSS, Adeola Ajayi, who is apparently the government chief complainer in the case, and the DSS DG in the video recorded and published by Symphony News Media in February 2025, narrated how youths of the Sowore community in Katagum local government area and Tafawa Balewa community of Tafawa Balewa local government area in Bauchi State, when the DSS DG was the State Director of State Security Services, SSS, resorted to self-help and killed all Boko Haram terrorists that came to attack them without depending on the security operatives, according to the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and its US counterpart, Donald Trump, on Tuesday engaged in a tough talk over the recognition of Palestine state and the Israeli war in Gaza during the bilateral meeting both held on the sideline of the UN General Assembly in New York, where the French president insisted that Israel has already achieved more by killing the top militia leaders of Hamas, saying, "It doesn't work to dismantle the Hamas. This is not the right way to proceed," he said, while President Trump had reiterated and insisted that things will not work the way the French president had suggested, that the October 7, 2023 hostages still in the custody of Hamas cannot be honored with such suggestions. The meeting was held when videos of the French President, Emmanuel Macron, and Turkish President, Recep Erdogan went viral on the internet, where both presidents were stopped or blocked separately by New York police operatives as they tried to cross streets in the New York City over yet to be seen incoming motorcade of their counterpart President Donald Trump. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, called Donald Trump on the phone after his journey to the French embassy was blocked by police officers preparing for the motorcade of the US president, but that of the Turkish president, Recep Erdogan, could be seen, quickly surrounded by his security team in a manner that makes the president look apparently in shock. The moment some group of New York police officers advanced towards them to stop the Turkish presidential team from crossing the road. According to New York Times, nothing frustrates a New Yorker in a hurry like finding that a street has been blocked off because some big shot is in town. Apparently, the same is true for the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. On Monday evening, Mr. Macron, in New York for the UN General Assembly, was stuck on a Manhattan street corner that had been closed off for President Trump's motorcade. The meeting of world leaders is, among other things, a traffic nightmare. At first, Mr. Macron did what many New Yorkers might do. He pleaded with a police officer to let him cross the street. "I have 10 people with me," Mr. Macron told the officer, according to video that shows the French president making his case on the street corner. "I go to the French embassy." But the officer politely held his ground and would not let Mr. Macron cross the street. "I'm sorry, President, I'm really sorry," he told Mr. Macron. "It's just that everything's been frozen right now. There's a motorcade coming right now. I'm sorry." Mr. Macron, who has engaged in diplomacy to try to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, tried again. "I negotiate with you," the French president said on the video. When that didn't work, Mr. Macron did what average New Yorkers cannot do. He pulled out his phone and called the President of the United States. "How are you?" he asked Mr. Trump, cell phone pressed to his ear. "Guess what? I am waiting the street because everything is frozen for you." It was not clear from the video what Mr. Trump said, but Mr. Macron chuckled and told the American president that he was hoping to have a discussion with him and Qatari officials about the situation in Gaza. The White House did not immediately respond to a request. There is no doubt that this week may be an interesting week in the international community as world leaders gather for the 2025 United Nations General Assembly meeting to discuss and take a stand over decades of conflicts between Israel and the people of Palestine, especially some of them well known as Hamas fighters, over territorial integrity and sovereignty, most especially ever since the State of Palestine was officially declared by the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, on the 15th of November 1988, claiming sovereignty over the West Bank, which includes East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, and as at the end of 1988, over 78 countries approved the declaration, including Nigeria, that recognized Palestinian state barely 3 days after the declaration on November 18, 1988, and the numbers have been increasing particularly since the beginning of 2024 like never before, as at September 21, 2025. Over 151 countries out of the 193 United Nations members have recognized the Palestinian state, including United Kingdom, UK, which its recognition appears to be more disturbing to the Israeli government, with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, issuing what he described as a clear message to the world leaders recognizing Palestine as a country of its own that it's not going to happen. The United Kingdom, Australia, Canada among others declared and announced their recognition of the Palestinian state on September 21, 2025, while countries like Germany, Italy, Japan and South Korea among others are yet to make their position known. In a video broadcast on Sunday, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said, "Today, to revive the hope of peace for the Palestinians and Israelis, and a two-state solution, the United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine," adding that the recognition is not a reward for Hamas, reiterating that the United Kingdom has already prescribed and sanctioned Hamas as a terrorist organization, saying, "Any member of Hamas will not be a member of the Palestinian government, including joining the security architectures of the Palestinian state." A statement by the Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu issued a few hours after the video broadcast by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. The Israel Prime Minister said there would never be a Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. In quotes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, "I have a clear message to those leaders who are recognizing a Palestinian state after the horrendous October 7th massacre. You are rewarding terror with an enormous prize. And I have another message for you. It's not going to happen. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years I have prevented the creation of that terror state, against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination, and with astute statesmanship. Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. The response to the latest attempt to force upon us a terror state in the heart of our land will be given after my return from the United States. Stand by."
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East,
Sowore bringing you the news in a more digital way.